Hello, welcome. My name is Karen. We're going to be going through a series of workshops that talk about just understanding how money works and just some money management in general. As you know, a lot of people have gone through some difficult times. Stress is over the top sometimes, especially in the area of finances. So I pray that as you listen to this information, you will be able to take away something, and may God give you the wisdom and understanding to make some differences in your life. So stay tuned as the workshop starts. Thank you so much. Hello, my name is Karen Garenser. I am here to chat with you about money mindset. Thanks for joining me today. I also just want to remind you there are a bunch of other topics we've already made some posts on, so you can go and look for those that will help have this one make sense. So it's kind of a series that goes down, and this is, maybe sort of a summary of your mindset. So as I go through some of the things I'm going to share, I just want you to challenge yourself in how you think. Are you thinking poverty-minded, middle-minded, or do you think like people who are wealthy think? There are lots of reasons why we need to look at that. A lot of times we don't get education in our school upbringing or in our family environments around money and finance. Lots of people have stories of struggling financially, and the enemy loves to keep us stuck in those kind of generational curses. And so we need to make sure that it's going to be up to us to have to educate ourselves and take action and make some drastic changes sometimes in the way we do things in order to change the next generations to come. So let's start off with a verse, Luke 16:10. The one who is faithful with very little is also faithful with much, and the one who is dishonest with very little is also dishonest with much. So you have to ask yourself, I work hard for money, I'm sure you do. How do you steward that money? And really, the money isn't ours. The money belongs to God, and he's giving it to us to steward, and we give him some back, and that belongs to him too. We think we're giving him some of our money. No, no, no. It belongs to God. It all belongs to God. Everything we have belongs to God. So you have to think about it from that perspective. He's giving you this money. Are you doing good things with it? Are you making proper decisions with it? So let's assess that. We've got 95% of people here in Canada that are broke, 5% that are financially secure. Out of that 5%, 4% are considered okay financially. If you watch my previous workshop where I talked about financial independence, your financial independence number, for somebody in the 4% category, they're needing to save between 1.5 and $3 million for retirement. That's just enough money to be okay. The wealthy 1% is like a 10 million plus number. And so a lot of times that category is broken down by people who are professionals, lawyers, doctors, maybe super salespeople, but 74% of the 1% are actually entrepreneurs, people who have done something, got an idea, promoted that idea, grew a business, employed hundreds, maybe thousands of people, depending on the business. But, they put themselves in position to control their own money. So we have really two types of people. We have a spender and a saver. Now we have to think about that. What is the mindset of a spender? Well, we all have dreams. Each one of us have dreams. We had dreams as kids, we wanted to accomplish something, maybe you wanted to become a doctor, but maybe you ended up just having an average labor job because you were afraid to pursue that goal. I don't know what it was for you. But a lot of times when we have a dream and we let go of that dream that God placed in our heart and we start earning an income, we now have to reduce our dream, and we shrink that down to match our income in that paycheck. Versus if you're a saver, right? So a spender will basically, do what they want with their money today, and then they freak out come retirement time because they don't have enough money. And, as they get closer towards retirement, whatever plans that God had for you maybe get shrunk into this thing that you no longer believe in those plans because you're basing the decisions you make on the paycheck amount you make, when your God is way bigger than that. So if we take a look at being a saver, you have to raise your income to achieve the goals that you want, right? So rather than having a dream gap, let's make it an income gap and start working towards, well, what can you do to increase your income so that you can accomplish those goals you want to? So Proverbs 21:20 says, precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. So do you plan ahead or do you live for the moment? It's important to know the choices we make will have an effect on our finances all the time and on many other areas. Now, obviously, in the money world, one of the concepts we have is paying yourself first, but I just want to speak to this because God needs to be first in your money decisions, right? So you tithe to him. So look at it this way. Let's say we look at your paycheck, no matter if you make 50,000 or 100,000 or whatever that is in the country you live in, but let's say whatever that paycheck amount is, what if you could just live on 70% of it to pay your bills? In other words, you take 30%, 10% goes to God, 10% to your long-term, 10% to your short-term goals, and you live on 30%. So apply these simple rules and will help you to start living a better life financially and start stewarding properly what God's given you. So paying yourself first is prioritizing your savings. It's the golden rule of personal finance. Do you care more about the financial wellness of your local coffee shop? You know, paying yourself first means putting your needs and your future before anything else in terms of bills you have to pay. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, God comes first. First fruits always go to God, but we're talking about money concepts and what we do with the leftover money in our pocket, right? You can start as small as $100 a paycheck or $1 a day and start to watch your savings grow. It's really about creating some important disciplines in your life so that it will help you to start to create good habits that will help you accumulate wealth for the future. So 5 steps you can do to build healthy habits. You train yourself to set aside those small dollar amounts each and every month. You might find that you start saving more money and put away more money than you thought is possible. I always tell people, hey, start off with something small, like let's say $25 or $35 or whatever. I mean, that's the cost of a pizza here in Canada. So let's say you set that aside and then you do that every single month. Pretty soon you realize, wow, I don't even realize I missed that money. So now, when you don't feel the pinch, you can increase it to 50 and then increase it to 75 and then increase it to 100. And you keep doing that. Before you know it, you'll be saving $1,000 a month. It might take you a few years to get there, but the important thing is that you're doing it in increments. So be more mindful of your spending. Most people do not even think about what they spend their money on. We have those debit cards, we tap at a machine, we don't even pay attention to if that's the right amount. I've had wrong amounts debit out of my bank account because I wasn't paying attention. Whose fault is that? Yeah, you can go get it corrected if you've got your receipt and et cetera, but some people maybe not even realize that happened because they don't even look at it. And the other thing too, is we're so used to this electronic world where we just tap, 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 tap. There's no emotional value for that at all. But if you kept a crisp $100 bill in your wallet and you go through the coffee shop place in the morning, when you tap, you don't even think about it. You're just thinking about the coffee you're going to swallow. But if you have to take out a crisp $100 bill and have that physically be given to somebody and see it come out of your hands to somebody else, and now you end up with a smaller bills and you don't have that crisp 100, your coffee now seems like it's far more expensive than you want it to be. So just think about that. Creating an emergency fund, you need that. Life happens, emergency happens. If you don't have an emergency fund, you're going to go into debt. Building a nest egg, you need to start small, as I had said. Number 1, having that habit, right? Make sure that you're working towards a goal, short-term, long-term. You may want to purchase a house or save for retirement, but you need to put those things in place, whether it's a a family vacation or whatever, it's not about putting it on your credit card and then paying it off later. That's how you get stuck in the trap of debt. That is Satan working in your life over the spirit of mammon. And we'll do some talks about that down the road. It is amazing how that spirit of mammon filters into all areas of people's lives. For example, number 2, be mindful of your spending. You know, if you're the type of person who buys something and then hides it from your spouse because you're afraid maybe to have an argument or, you know, be held accountable for that, you know, you should have a benchmark. Number 1, a benchmark. If you spend over this amount, it should be discussed together, right? Small little amounts, whatever, day to day, not a big deal. But if you're hiding things and purchasing things that you know you probably shouldn't because you're feeling sad or lonely or empty inside, and then you have buyer's remorse after, those are all under the spirit of mammon. Think about it. Even choosing a job. If God puts you in this job paying you $40,000 a year, and maybe there's difficult people you work with, and you're not going to God to get some discernment around that, and you just quit that job and go to another job, same type of job, because somebody offers you $60,000, maybe you hate it over there. Well, whose fault is that? And how do you know that God wasn't going to get rid of those other people at that workplace with $40,000 and promote you? So those things are all the spirit of mammon. We don't even realize how it's filtered into people's lives. And yeah, people today work how many days a week? 7. That's again the spirit of mammon. Money, money, money. Chase, 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 right? So number 5 is having peace of mind. You'll sleep better at night knowing you have put away some money and you have the ability in a situation to be able to tap into that resource to help you through it. So we have a lifespan that we go through. It's the accumulation phase. So you work, you save money, you're planning for your future, and then you have this pot of money that you have now in your future. Now you're in the phase where you're looking at, okay, I need to assess my, you know, what I'm going to need for expenses in my retirement and how much am I going to want to pull out and what's the impact of tax and all those things. But that's your distribution phase. Right? And then as you go through that, you move closer towards older age. You're starting to think about your estate, your loved ones, what you want to leave. You know, that's the legacy that you'd like to be able to have. You know, are you leaving debt or are you actually leaving a legacy? So those are things you need to think about. So Luke 14:28-30 says, "For which of you desire to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who will see it will begin to mock him, saying, 'This man began to build and was not able to finish.'" So I think about that. I want to leave a legacy for my family. I want my family to be better off than I am. You know, that they have more choices. I struggled a lot with money and finance for a good portion of my life because I realized I had a generational curse on my family that I had to learn how to break. And so there could be things that are affecting your spending. So I encourage you, don't go it alone. Go talk to your pastors, go talk to a mentor, go talk to somebody who can give you some sound advice. And then, you know, talk to God. He's got all the answers. He is the master planner. He's your master advisor. So go talk to him. He will help you with that, but you need to be able to get some information so you can make good decisions. So here's 3 types of people: poverty mindset person, middle mindset, and then wealthy mindset. So how do they think differently? Well, poverty mindset, maybe they have government income they're living on, or they have a small amount of income, maybe you work at just a minimum wage job, or you know, you don't have any post-secondary education and you put yourself down, and so you choose jobs that are beneath you instead of rising up. I'm telling you, I have a high school education. You know, I've sought out this knowledge that I'm teaching you. So if I can learn, you can learn, right? So a poverty mindset person makes this income and then goes and buys all the things they want. Not needs, but wants. You need to define the difference between a need and a want. And then you look at a middle income person, they'll make the income, they'll pay all their bills, then they'll go get what they want. Now, what are you seeing here? You see income and wants, income, expenses, and wants. Well, let's look at the wealthy. They look at their income. You know, if they're a believer, they're going to pay God first. Then they're going to set aside money for themselves. Then they're going to pay their expenses. Then they're going to go get their wants. It's the last thing on the list. It's financial discipline. These guys don't even have investing or saving in here because this person blows all their money, poverty mindset. They live with this scarcity mentality that it's going to run out. Middle income, they also have that mentality too. But because they maybe don't realize that spirit is upon them, they sometimes are bitter about not having a lot of money. They're often bitter towards the people who are wealthy. And so they'll just go and put it on a credit card and say, oh, I'll just pay it off later. But they don't realize how many times over they're paying for that. Go to my debt and cash flow management workshop and you'll learn more about that. So how does that affect your decision? Oh, I see a typo up there. I apologize for that. So how does that affect your decision? Well, a poverty mindset person, let's say back in 2007, wants to buy an iPhone. And it's $499 for this iPhone. Well, if they're only making $1,000, they're going to spend half their paycheck on an iPhone. Whereas a wealthy person says, you know what? What if I take that $499 and I invest it in stock, like maybe Apple stock instead of an Apple iPhone? 14 years later, that $499 would be worth $15,700. So you have to ask this poverty-minded person, how many phones did they buy over that 14-year period? Or how about an iPod? Do you guys remember iPods? I was long, after they had the Walkmans with the little tapes and the ear things we used to wear. And then you had that little tiny piece of technology that held way more music. Well, an iPod back in 2001 was $399. Well, if you invested that $399 in Apple stock, 20 years later, you'd have $158,000. You have to think about it. Wealthy mindset, poor man mindset, right? What about becoming debt-free? Well, a lot of times people don't recognize the choices they make, right? So let's say an average car payment today is $570 a month. Most people, statistically speaking, will spend 4 to 6 years on average. Every 4 to 6 years, they'll make a new purchase, right? Whether they sell their old car or just upgrade. So over the course of their lifetime, to age 85, even in retirement, they're going to own 13 cars, which is $444,000 they've spent on a depreciating asset. As you know, you buy a new car, you drive it off the lot, it's worth less in the same day you bought it. Well, if you took that $570, let's say you averaged a 10% rate of return over a 40-year period rather than spending, through your leading up to retirement with car loans and then in retirement with car loans, you'd have almost $3 million in savings accumulated, an appreciating asset. Things to think about. Deuteronomy 28:12 says, the Lord will open to you his good treasury, the heavens, and give you the rain to your land in its season, and to bless all the work of your hands. And you shall lend to many, but borrow from none. Now, if you're a good steward and you tithe and you do good things for people and you have a good heart for God, and, I believe he is a God of abundance, but we have to be obedient first. And there's lots of things that he needs to teach us so that we can become more obedient, especially around money, especially around tithe, especially, just understanding how to use our money wisely and reach out to him and get some discernment on the decisions we make, and don't just make them on our own. So here's becoming debt-free, a strategy. In my debt workshop, the very first workshop I did on this platform, you will be able to see the this broken down in much greater detail. But here you can see the creditor: retail, Visa, auto, mortgage, right? So $100 payment to the retail card, 180 to the auto, 180 to the Visa, 570 to the auto, and 450 to the mortgage. So the family is spending $2,300 a month towards debt. So month one, you're going to use that $100 of resources that you have, rather than making a minimum payment to pay off the 100. You're going to find the resources, pay off that 100. Then you're going to take the 100 and add it to the 180. Now you're putting 280 on the Visa. Once the Visa is paid, you've now got 280 extra. Now you're moving that 280 on top of the 570, which is the car payment. Now you're making an 850 car payment. And so now you're going to pay that off faster. And when that's all done, that 850 can now apply to your mortgage. And now you're doing $2,300 a month on your mortgage, and it gets paid off faster. So just a way to strategically pay attention to how you can pay your debt down. And so it's not hard to figure out. There's a lot of ways. It just takes some discipline. So don't pay your smallest debt first. Pay your smallest debt first. Don't pay your highest interest rate first. That's typically what most people do because it costs them the most. It's the most painful to look at. But we are people of immediate gratification, and it's way easier to see the needle moved on the small debt and then just stock those payments and apply to the next debt, and so on and so on. You'll move the needle way faster than the way you've been doing it. So let's talk about cash flow. Actually, the Lord is king, but in the saying, cash flow is king. So you have your net monthly income minus your monthly expenses. The end result is your real cash flow, right? So most people will say, oh, I make $100,000 a year of income. That's gross. That's before tax. Your net is what ends up in your bank account. That's your net monthly income. But your real cash flow is after your expenses and what you have left over. So Romans 13:7-8 says, pay to all what is owed to them, taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, honor to whom honor is owed. Owe no one anything except to love one another, for the ones who love one another has fulfilled the law. Jesus loved us all in our good and bad. Okay, so let's look at this cash flow aspect. These are just examples of real cash flow. So somebody could be making $5,000 a month, but they have $4,900 of expenses. So they only have $100 of real cash flow. Let's say we got somebody who works in the oil field industry. They're making $20,000 a month. They could have $19,000 of expenses, big fancy house, big cars, boats and quads and sea-doos and family vacations and blowing money left, right, and center. They only have $1,000 of real cash flow. In this situation, I'd rather be the first guy than the last guy. At least the spending doesn't look as bad, but I don't want to be either of those. So here we have a person who makes $5,000, but their expenses are $3,000. Now they've got a positive $2,000 cash flow. And then, of course, ideally, you've got somebody who makes $5,000, their expenses are only $1,000, they've got a $4,000 cash flow. The fourth person is way wealthier than this guy who makes 20 grand a month. Make sense? This person is confident in their identity, probably is doing the right thing with their money, probably understands biblical principles. This guy over here is like hung up in that spirit of mammon and really might look good on the outside, but they're living a painful financial death on the inside. Okay, so let's talk about defining wealth, because it's important you understand these statistics. I talked about 95% retiring at or below the poverty level in our country. It could be the same like in the country where you live. But we also have to look at the fact that, the 4% and the 5%, the 5% that are wealthy is made up of 4%, 4%, not two fingers, 4%. The 4% that, are working hard to be able to save and accomplish their goals in retirement, right? The 1% are usually business owners, professional individuals, they could be super salespeople, et cetera, right? And so they make up that 1% that's extremely wealthy. So we have to kind of gauge, what does that look like along that journey? 3.5 million is just financially okay. 5 to 10 million is financially secure. And real wealth in our world is 10 million plus. Okay. So, you kind of have to assess yourself and say, well, where have I saved money? What does it look like? Is this really realistic? Well, let me show you something. I talked about the 95 and 5. Real wealth is that 10 million plus. The average are just getting by. They can live comfortably in retirement, that 4% category, but they still have to pay attention to how long they live and the amount of money they have and what they're spending it on. Whereas the real wealthy, they can give and they still have lots left over to give. So financially okay, financially secure, real wealth. Let's assess it. If you're a 30-year-old couple, and let's say you're only making, between the two of you, $48,000 a year, and you want to retire at 65, 35 years out, that is equivalent to pulling out $138,000 out of your pot of money. Yes, that's what I said. 138, 35 years from now buys the same thing 48,000 does today. So let's look at that. 138,000 a year. Let's say they only live 20 years in retirement. That's 2.8 million. Lots of people are living 30 years. Can you see why it's 3.5? Okay, let's take a look at this 30-year-old couple now making 72,000 a year, right? So 72,000, 35 years from now, they're going to have to pull out $202,000 a year out of their pot of money to buy what 72,000 gives them today. Do the math. 202,000 times by 20 years, now it's 4 million. Do you see why this is saying financially okay? So let's look at a 30-year-old couple, maybe some professionals with some engineering degrees between the two of them. Let's call it 168,000. That's equivalent to pulling out 472,000 out of their pot of money. So if you multiply that over 20 years, that's $9 million. So can you see how this is so important for you to know the math, have a game plan, don't arrive at your destination dumbfounded, arrive at your destination with a sense of confidence and security that you've accomplished what you wanted to. So Proverbs 13:22, a good man leaves his inheritance to his children's children, but a sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous. It goes back to that very first verse. We have to be faithful with the little amount that the Lord gives us. He is pruning, refining us, changing us, developing us, preparing us for what's coming. And if we can't be faithful in the little, and that includes our tithe, that includes just the management, the day-to-day management of our money, the decisions we make, if we can't be faithful with that, why would he give us more?